Where do I go?
All right, what's going on, man? I got the forearm. That means we're doing a live here on Murder Mental Mayhem.
Can I have my arm back, please? Can I have my arm back, please?
I'm sorry. Thanks. You get some skin in the game now, AR.
Hey, I'm okay. I grew my teeth in. My teeth grew in, so I'm okay now.
Well, I lost my hair from that last live we did, so you got the teeth. We're good to go, and you're here with me on the Murder Metal Mayhem channel and broadcasting simultaneously on yours. So it's awesome to see you, my friend. How have you been?
Hey, man, it's been beautiful. We've had great weather here in Vegas, and I've taken that little quiet time away from everything to just focus on health and a little bit of family time. And now we're back, and I'm truly appreciative of the invite to join you here today. You know, I love collabing with you. We always have great combos. So
yeah, man, I definitely enjoy talking to you as well. And here where I'm at, we're getting some high winds, so hoping that Horns High Studio remains intact. I'm in a concrete building though, AR, and of course I'm a metalhead, so I'm pretty well protected. And got lots of creepiness around me. I don't think any storms would get too sassy enough to come in here.
You got some serial protection behind you, so you should be all right.
That's right. And the people that watch the lives and my videos always comment on the masks behind me, but I've got the Bundy mask on this shoulder. And of course, Gacy is Pogo, and then next to Gacy, old Richard Ramirez there. But I change them up and move them around. But the Gacy one's always been my favorite. So
I'm a Richard Ramirez kind of follower, man. I've looked into him quite a bit. I found him to be a very interesting individual for sure.
He was. And one of our co-hosts, Joey, he's written to Ramirez bunches of times. As a matter of fact, beneath the masks, I have something about the different people below it. And like the Jim Jones mask, I got some Flavor Aid in a frame beneath it. And under the Ramirez, we've got a copy of one of the letters Ramirez wrote back to Joey with a drawing on it too. So
that's cool type of stuff.
Yeah, I got a lot of neat stuff here in Horns High. I keep saying I'm going to do a video tour, and I am going to do it. I just need to find the time to get it done. So, but thanks everybody for coming and welcome, and good to be here doing this. And I just wanted to go over a few rules here, just real basic stuff, a lot of just common sense, but be civil in the chat. You know, we've got several moderators. They're going to be asked, you know, to not put up with any nonsense. So if that's your intent, go somewhere else. Thanks to all the mods out there doing this, keeping the trolls away. We both appreciate that. If you have a question, I am able to star some of them and set them aside, but if the chat gets going, it'd be easy for me to miss. So if you want to put some question marks before your question, that'll help me see it better, but if you can. And depending on how many questions we get and how busy the chat is, we may not get to all of them. We're going to do the very best that we can, but understand that. And we're going to take some short breaks as we go through around the half-hour mark to go over questions. So there will be, I think, ample time to do it. But again, it all depends on how many and what we're doing. And me and AR are very loosely prepared. We know some general topics, but he and I can riff on some Idaho 4. Is that not right, AR?
I believe that's what you're bullying me into today. I think you got my arm behind my back, and that's where we're
Oh
getting led
no.
to. So,
Oh no.
just to
Oh
kind of
boy.
follow up with what you have to say, I'm not as engaged in being able to see the chat today because, as many know, my wife is one of the big parts of my whole live broadcast. She helps me with that. So, today, Pete will be the eyes and will be following the lead. So, I will do everything I can to try and help.
Right.
But
That's cool.
I'm going
My
to let
wife
you
is
kind of.
on too. So my wife is keeping tabs. So we got some people looking. So again, we appreciate your understanding. I'm going to be giving away a couple things. I love giving stuff away, AR. I love doing that. And I've got this Murder Metal Mayhem activity book. You probably never thought you needed an adult activity book, but Murder Metal Mayhem has one. It's on the web store actually, but it's got like crossword puzzles with like serial killers and true crime stories, different things you could color related to true crime. It's just fun, but it's our
Pete,
adult activity book.
where the hell was that when I was in the penitentiary? I
This
needed
would have been
all the
nice.
activity. I could have
Yeah.
used that. I could have used it.
Yeah, it would have been helpful, but yeah, this is a lot of fun. And there's some articles that each of the three of us, the original cast of the podcast, did. This is a few years old, but I've got one of these I'm going to give away. And then I'm going to give away one of my books, which is Slab of Sickness. This has got a few short stories in it. It's a short book, but it's got some short stories in it, and I think you'll like that. And I got a bookmark. I'll sign them both. U.S. only though on the contest. I got beat up sending a shirt to Sweden. It cost me like $30, so I can't do that. So sorry if you're out of the U.S. for these contests, but you'll have to stick around because I'll have a question at the end that you'll have to answer and an email address to send it to, and then you can enter the contest that way. So hang out if you want to do that. If you do want to donate to the cause, in the ticker below, you'll see an email address if you want to use PayPal, or there's the super sticker option. But know that YouTube gets a cut of the super sticker stuff. And of course, that's up to you. I mean, it's not, you know, required, of course. It's very much appreciated. But I did want to mention it since I get people that ask me this all the time. But AR and I've got some big news we're going to roll out for you, AR. This is pretty exciting. I think they're going to dig this. What do you think?
Who knows? It depends on how much they actually like this or not.
They may watch this live and be like, what? I'm not going to want
we may
anything to
turn
do
them all off right about now, right?
with these two fools. I don't know.
As
But
the
we'll
subscriber numbers plummet.
but we're going to roll that out. And I think you guys are going to want to hear this. It's going to be a lot of fun. And also, don't forget, tomorrow, AR, me, and Lucky, the three amigos, are going to get together to do a live from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be on this channel. It's going to be on AR's. I don't think Lucky's going to have it on his, but he was working on that. So,
Yeah.
but
And
make
just so
sure you
everybody
guys
knows,
check it out.
Jen will be a part of that live. We will
Okay.
have one of the
You'll
main
have
bosses back involved tomorrow night. And I'm sure the
well, that's
dogs
good.
will get involved too.
Dogs are there if necessary. That's good.
Yeah.
Very sure.
We'll bring
So
in
that's
all the
going to be
forces.
great.
Yeah.
With such a good time doing that for you guys, the last one. So we're going to do that. And the three of us talked about doing them on a regular basis for you. You keep liking them, and then we'll keep doing them. So yeah.
And even outside just the Idaho 4, we'll randomly do other cases together as well. And I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so too. Because yeah, we would like to talk about things other than the Idaho 4. I mean, I know everybody's here to talk about Idaho 4, and we're going to do that here right now. But it is definitely nice to get into some other topics, and we can definitely tell AR and from the views that the non-Idaho 4 content just doesn't get nearly the views that the Idaho 4 stuff does, you know.
Yeah.
So
Idaho Force got the attention of everybody. I truly believe that. It's a worldwide case being watched right now, which in the true crime community, it's not always that way. It's very demographic. And certain people gravitate to certain type of cases, but the Idaho Four gravitates and grabs everybody. And I guess
right.
it's understandable. It's a very unusual style of crime. It's an unusual investigation to a crime. And then, of course,
Mhm.
4 victims in a college town. It's pretty
Right.
understandable why it catches everybody's attention. So,
Yeah, and on the podcast we talk about this all the time. There's some of the serial killers or killers that we talk about that have very extensive, victim counts, but they're not
mhm,
nearly known as well as, like a Dahmer or a Bundy, let's say. And it's just interesting how that happens to work out. We talk about it, is there something else big going on in the news cycle that overshadows it? Was there another true crime case that just for whatever reason caught fire that overshadows it?
right. Well,
Yeah, I
I'll tell
think
you what,
that's
we're a year and a half into this Idaho 4, and the interest is not going away. It's only getting
no.
more and more visible. And I believe you're probably in the same situation. I get so many emails and messages every day in regards to this case with people
Mhm.
wanting certain things to be looked at, investigated, talked about, and we do our very best. I'm sure you feel the same way. We put in as much time as we possibly can, and that's why it can get a little draining at times. So
Right.
I know people have been a little bit worried about why they haven't seen me as much. It can get draining, and you've got to step away every once in a while and recollect and catch your breath and come back, because we do care. We care about the people. We care about the community. We care about our subscribers. So we put our best efforts in, and it can get tiring. So,
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm supposed to be semi-retired, but it sure doesn't feel that way. I've been busier now than when I worked full time.
yeah,
So,
I,
yeah, it's a
I,
lot of
I,
work,
I
but I
agree.
enjoy it. I
I
enjoy being
agree.
creative, so I enjoy doing this very much. And so we're going to talk about a few different topics that were kind of fresh on our minds. And one of the things that I've been talking about in some of my recent videos, I did a true crime deep cuts about it, is this whole issue of the transfer or touch DNA that was left on the sheath. And so many things they are to talk about with that. We had one of the viewers here. I'm looking. It was Jennifer Fowler had asked about this. Let me see if I can the touch DNA, and so I thought I would show that real quick, and then we can explain it. But I did quite a bit of research on this topic, AR, and it is fascinating because I always assumed, if the DNA is there, then the person's guilty. I mean, what more is there to really, I mean, case closed. And that's why I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the Idaho 4 when this happened, because when I heard that, I was just like, yeah, next. I mean, what else is interesting? That's a done deal, because in the podcast we do a weekly. So every week I'm doing a different topic. So I'm like jumping to the next thing. And then all of a sudden I learned about this, and I'm like, man, like that really changes things, because we're just talking about a few skin cells, man. I mean, what do you think about it?
Yeah, and a lot of my knowledge in regards to touch DNA doesn't so much come from like what you do with the research and the background of what you've seen through. I've seen it firsthand being around the people that are going to trial based on the evidence that's been collected against them. And the number one thing that I always learned and I heard and I read in the paperwork, touch DNA isn't really that creditable. Many
No.
cases, it's not even admissible into the
Right.
actual case.
Yeah,
So
the
when
US
someone,
military doesn't allow it.
right,
Australia doesn't allow it. I'm sure there's other countries, but that Australian federal police officer I interviewed Mick, he said that they don't allow it.
Yeah,
If it's on a transferable item. So a
right.
transferable item like a knife sheath, anybody could have put that there, as we well know.
And I
So
guess that's where I much like you at first when I heard DNA at the crime scene, I said the dude's fried. He's done.
right.
Like
Yeah.
that to me, because typically when you hear people talking about DNA at the crime scene, you're thinking of blood, you're thinking of saliva, you're thinking of whatever it could be that's an actual DNA at the crime scene. And then when they started talking about the small amount that it was, literally no amount, I want to say it's almost nothing, and then it became known that it's not real DNA. I say real DNA, but touch DNA to me is not real, because I could shake your hand and you're going to put my DNA somewhere. So
Right.
I don't even have to be there for my DNA to show up there.
Right.
At that point, that's not credible. That shouldn't even be admissible. It should not be
Right.
admissible. You know,
Exactly. And yeah, and that
I can't find.
interview, when he talked about that, that was fascinating, because we discussed, you said how little DNA. And if you're watching this and I know some people hear DNA and they just tune out, but seriously, this isn't that complicated, because I'm a high school graduate. I'm not some professor. I don't, I'm just a normal guy, just like anybody else. But when it comes to DNA, they use picograms. Okay. So 500 picograms is like the ideal amount or more for it to be scientifically accurate. Okay. 500. Now, Mick, that Australian officer, said some labs can do 200 to 300, but that's not as solid as that 500 is kind of the staple, the way, the standard for people to follow. In this case, 90. That's 18% of 500 is 90. Okay. So we're talking about 18% of the amount of DNA that would be required for this to be considered scientifically accurate. So what does that mean? That means that the analyst has to make some educated guesses to fill in the missing stuff. So there is all kinds of gray area there. And that is why, as you rightfully said, it's not allowed in other places. Like I said, Australia and the military are the two that I know of, and I'm sure there's many more, because it's very, very iffy at best. And so when you're basing an entire case, I mean, there are people, and we see them, I know you do too, in the comments, AR, with the whole, they got his DNA, the DNA's on the crime scene and all this. It's like, dude, do you really understand what you're saying? Because like I said, I talked to somebody who is an expert in this. I researched it myself, and it's crazy. So that is just skin cells. We're not talking about bodily fluids. We're talking about skin cells. And then I asked him, how about the odds of, or the likelihood or the ability of somebody to plant that? He said unbelievably easy. They could have got his skin cells from his doorknob of his apartment, his car door handle, his office. I mean, for God's sakes, I mean, they could have got it from anywhere and then planted it on the sheath, and then it miraculously shows up there.
Well, and you got to think about it even outside that. When we're talking about the possibility of planting it at the crime scene, it doesn't even so much have to be intentionally planted. Because if you really think about it, if somebody did leave the knife sheath at the scene to commit the crime, and maybe there's no DNA left by that person. However, somebody that had shaken hands with Kohberger or been in contact with Kohberger came in to investigate the very crime scene. And as we know, you have to change gloves and shoes and cover yourself appropriately, which we know in this investigation, we've seen it with our own eyes, that they were not very careful in the way that they conducted themselves around the crime scene. you could literally transfer that DNA unintentionally, which, yes, in a sense, just framed Brian Kohlberger, and it actually, manipulated the crime scene, but it might have been done unintentionally.
Sure.
So there's a big,
there's a million ways it could have got there. Mick talked about DNA shedders, and that males are more common to shed more DNA than females do, and some males even more than that. It depends, but males typically are DNA shedders. So it could have been, there's 1,000 different millions of ways that could have ended up there. But if you're talking about that small of an amount, the other problem is for DNA to be legit, the test has to be duplicated.
right.
They used up what they got because it was such a small amount. So it can't be duplicated. So right there, that's a problem, And so it's very frustrating when you're seeing people that are that into that whole DNA evidence in this case. I'm not saying that there's some questions there. I mean, did he touch the thing? Was it something he picked up at the Army surplus store and set down, and then the guy 2 days later picked it up and bought it and used it? Or did he pump gas, and then the guy that did this pumped gas, a day later? I mean, they say that your skin cells on your hands are not typically from you. Right. They're from other things. They're not yours. So you pick up lots of this stuff, and it could be moved around. I mean, he could have pumped gas and then shook hands, and it could be some crazy, weird way that it ended up there. Or it could have been an intentional plan. I don't know. I mean, certainly I love to bat it around,
Yeah, but at the end of the day, and I mean, I was going to ask you a question I literally feel is a very legitimate, serious question. And it goes both for prosecution and for the defense. When you're bringing in a type of DNA that's not as creditable as you want it to be, and of course, we already know that as fact, because look at what the prosecution's doing already. They don't want to give up any information on not only the chain of command of that DNA, but how they tested it, what all went around with it. They're hiding everything when it comes to that. They're hiding behind the IgG, but legitimately what I think they're doing is they're hiding the fact that it's not concrete DNA, real evidence. So at the end of the day, you have to think, how is the prosecution going to prepare testimony in a trial on such weak style of DNA, knowing the defense only has to make a quick statement and it becomes reasonable doubt on that DNA?
Sure.
And this is all based, of course, that Idaho is going to make it admissible and allow it in, because I've heard rumors that even the prosecution says they don't want to use it. They don't want to bring that in. But doesn't that throw out, if you don't want to bring that in, doesn't that throw out your main piece of actual evidence that everybody's convicted on? Right?
No, as I understand this, AR, and this sounds like, and I want to, before I do that, I want to mention this. Nancy Pecoraro, I saw the name. I had to throw my paisan up on the screen there because I saw that nice Italian last name. So thank you, Nancy, for this question. But we were just talking about this. If they were to plant the DNA and use touch DNA, it's such a small amount. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But when that's all you've got the ability to get, if it was a planted situation or a completely random situation, I guess it's hard to say. But
well, what makes it make sense, Pete, is if you are going to plant minuscule DNA onto that knife sheath that ties to Brian Kohlberger, let's say it is planted. Let's say this is a whole nefarious, really horrific way to get someone hemmed up and caught into a crime. Right. The whole reason why they would do it the way they did is because it's for the arrest warrant. They want to be able to arrest him. Okay. Then they could build the case. So think about that. Because right now, if the rumor is true that they're saying, hey, we don't need the IgG, we're going to throw the DNA away, we don't need it for our case. Well, you sure as hell needed it to get your arrest. That's why you made the whole game of digging through the trash and everything that you did, is because you had to have that to secure your arrest. Otherwise, they would have never been able to arrest him.
Right. And I think what they've done, as I understand it, you're right. And I think the way they're going to get around this IgG stuff by saying we don't need it now is because they used the IgG, the investigative genetic genealogy, and they used that to quote unquote think it was the Koberger family, and that's how they were supposedly able to figure, they're saying at least, that it was him. Then they follow him to Pennsylvania to go through his trash to then find his father's DNA, and then able to pin the father is the father of the person that left this touch DNA on the sheath. So then, of course, they arrest him, they swab him. Now they've got his DNA. They can match that. Again, this is what they're claiming. I'm not believing any of this nonsense. They match him to the DNA on the sheath, and now they're saying we don't need the IgG now because we've got his DNA on that sheath. But the way you found the DNA to get it to match the DNA on the sheath was by using the IgG. So it is like being at a carnival game where there's no way to win and you think you're going to get a big stuffed animal for your girlfriend. It's like that.
And that's exactly what I've been screaming, because as many people know, and I think that the reason why I kind of bring some people towards me is I talk about the justice system, how we need to hold them accountable. So I've been screaming from the very beginning that this arrest warrant should have never been issued. And even though it was, as the steps are unfolding of how they got the arrest warrant, which you have to go step by step here, they utilized bogus DNA to get an arrest warrant. So this type of DNA would not even be admissible, but they utilized it to be able to get an arrest warrant. Now, they claim they used the DNA that they found out of the trash cans and stuff to start building this tree that led to Koberger. But really all they cared about was getting the arrest warrant. And the reason why is once he's arrested, they get the buccal swab, they get his DNA now. So now they can match that straight across to the DNA found on the sheet. Now, none of the stuff from the IgG matters. None of the stuff from the dad's trash, none of that matters, because now they have his. But remember, if they had never secured the actual arrest warrant, they would have never got Brian Koberger's actual DNA swab, meaning this still would be in open air of whether he's even a person that could possibly be arrested. We'd still be waiting for an arrest if they didn't have substantially stronger evidence, which we know they don't, because they had to use the bogus stuff to get the arrest. If they had real evidence, meaning they had video of him walking in the front door, they had video of him in his car, they had anything substantial against him, this DNA would never even have mattered. It would have never mattered.
Right.
Just my opinion.
It's unbelievable. No, I think it's great, and I'm just blown away. Like I said, at the weight that people put on it, and I think that there's definitely some question marks there, and I think we raised, I think all of them I had on my list. But the whole transferable DNA thing, I think, is interesting because he used the example of if a robbery was committed and there was a Coke bottle in the back seat. In Australia, they wouldn't be able to use anything like that because it's transferable. Anybody could have thrown that in that back seat. So that makes sense, So this sheath is extremely transferable. And then the fact that it was on a bed with supposedly where two victims were, and in the scene that they were in, that had to be just a mess. And the only DNA is on the sheath. I mean, that's just doesn't make any sense. And that it's his, what about the other two? So makes no sense to me.
You know, and I had a conversation with somebody not long ago, Pete. It was a great conversation. It was an older gentleman, and we were talking about, you know, prison and what he had gone through when he was getting convicted, because he actually got released and found not guilty after 22 years of being in the penitentiary, because the DNA actually came back to not be his, where they convicted him based upon DNA they said was his. And we got into this conversation. I was just asking him, you know, because a lot of my cases didn't rely on DNA evidence. They had other substantial evidence that DNA didn't matter in my type of cases. But,
Right.
you know, it was very interesting to hear the battle that you have to go through to disprove legitimate DNA, like saliva, blood. And
Oh,
you
sure.
got to really fight to disprove that. And the way he spoke upon the type of evidence that's being portrayed to be in the Brian Koberger case. We don't know for sure. We know what we've heard and what we think it is. But he said that's almost reasonable doubt before you even walk into the trial. That's almost reasonable doubt. And it's
Right.
like, well, I get that. I really do. But it was used in this case, because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think the sheath or the DNA from it is going to be used in the trial. I don't think they're even going to risk it. I don't think they're going to talk about it.
Wow.
And I know the defense is fighting it, and they very damn well should be.
Right. Right.
I think
What do you think they got enough? I mean, I'm thinking with that, it's weak as hell. Without it, I don't even.
Well,
Wow.
and that's the biggest question that in the back of my mind, because like I just did the video about being fair to both sides and walking that fine line. I'm not going to find him completely innocent, and I'm not going to yell that he's guilty. What I want to know is what substantially more evidence-wise do you have that could prove either way?
Right.
And right now it seems so weak that they relied on a simple arrest warrant to hold this kid while they tried to build a case through mainstream media, the guilters putting out so much thought of evidence that's not creditable, that's not really even justified yet.
Right.
So that now we're literally looking at a case where he's been found guilty already. Okay, he's found guilty right now before trial. And all of our discussions are trying to prove reasonable doubt for like an appeal type hearing, you know? And I don't like that. And that's why our justice system really needs to be looked at in a way that we're allowing these things to happen. Because right away, when it started getting talked about how they got this arrest warrant, people should have shivered in their own clothing, worried that it could happen to any one of us or our children, our loved ones. And that would be the only time it seems as though many people would actually care that it goes wrong, is when it does affect their daily life.
Right.
This should affect everybody, because we're watching with our very own eyes how it's just being manipulated to fit the mold of what they want it to be. And it doesn't fit for many of us.
Right.
And this DNA is a prime example of why it's not creditable DNA. And then with the brass button, like you've talked about, and
yeah, we're going to get to that here in a minute. I want to talk about that because a lot of people have been asking me about this. But before we do that, AR, I know we talked about half hour. We're going to do some questions here. So
yes, sir.
I got a guy on my channel, Carl Thomas. He puts up the best comments. I mean, not to just say it's only him, because I get a lot of great comments, but Carl is really on it, and he poses some interesting ideas. Here's one of them. He's given us a couple tonight, AR, but here's one about after the crime at the two U of I sororities placed on probation for drugs and other forms of misconduct, Alpha Phi, which was Kaylee's, and Pi Beta Phi, which was Xana, Maddie, and Bethany, and connection with Sigma Chi in the house. So we know there's all sorts of drama with these fraternities and sororities over there, AR, but what do you think? I mean, I wonder why these are even allowed. I mean, honestly, it's just ridiculous.
I growing up, I had a couple of cousins, and I remember I was still young. I was early high school, and they came out to New Mexico, where my parents lived, to go to college, and they were always welcomed at my parents' house. But they were frat members. They were part of the fraternities, and it's like a cult. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but they're so close
No,
and
it is.
mingled together, you can't
It is.
break that bond.
It's very
And
cult-like.
just here recently, I was reading something. I haven't deep dove into it yet, but what was it? 40 frat members beat somebody up, or something
Yeah.
happened in Moscow on top
Yeah,
of
the
all this.
football players, and like 50 of them ganged up on this one dude, and yeah, it was pretty bad. Beat him up pretty good.
I mean, I know they have lawyers because it's the fraternity name at risk. So they have representation. And then you got all past members that are still very much involved in the frats and the sororities. I'm telling you, it's crazy to even think about, but they're all human just like the rest of us. And there are going to be people within those that have criminal minds.
Right.
I
think the problem is most of the kids there, not all of them, but a good majority of them come from money, because it's expensive to be able to be a member of these damn cults.
Yeah.
And as we both know, people with money, seem to get, a wink and a nod from the police a little more often than somebody that comes up from the streets. That's for damn sure.
Well, it's funny too that you
these are
mentioned
kids
that.
of privilege. They're kids of privilege.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because both of my cousins came from good money families, and they were well off, driving Mercedes while they were in college. They didn't have to worry about what they were going to get for their next meal. They could get whatever they wanted.
Right.
And I remember them getting in trouble numerous times, numerous DUIs, various things, even a breaking and entering at one point. But because they were fraternity members going to college and had substantial money, no charges were ever filed against them. They got out of everything because they had that representation, the lawyers to also back up everything. So, I mean, it's pretty easy I've always screamed, David, 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 because I've watched, through the time of their online presence of social media, watched them portray themselves very much as they were interested in violent crimes.
Oh, yeah.
And you see the weapon of choice is in their hands, and they're that very short walk away, and it just screams and screams and screams. And did they even get interviewed, or did lawyers get in there and block it all before it even, happened?
Right.
So,
what it reminds me of with those two is the Leopold and Loeb case up in Chicago from like the 20s or 30s, whenever that was. But they were two rich kids that just went out and like randomly picked some young kid up off the street and made him extinct. And it's just unbelievable. And the only reason they did it was just because they could, and it was for kicks, because they had this sick fantasy. Reminds me very much of them. And they went into court with the best lawyer you could possibly have, and they both were put away. I mean, it didn't work out, but it was an interesting case.
When we talk the frats, and I'll just kind of wrap up my thoughts a little bit of it, why I looked so hard at the frats, because they also mingle with the sororities and the fraternities of other fraternities and, the college. But if you really think about the Idaho 4 crime, I narrow it down. It's you see a lot of anger involved in it. So somebody had to be extremely pissed off. I see emotion behind it, to where they took more anger out on certain people than others. I see the non-existent observance of other living survivors that he would have, or whoever it was, walked right past and out the door, leaving them to be just fine.
Right.
So in the back of my mind, I look at the fraternities and I say, well, you got a pretty massive argument in regards to something with two people from the very house on the night of the crime.
Right.
Somebody made mention of you having a small Peter. That would kind of be an emotional hit.
Right.
And there's potential that these people know about a hazing situation that could cause you prison time from the past.
Yes.
Of a
Hunter
young
Lindau.
that you possibly hazed
Hudson
into
Lindau.
their life. Yeah. So there's all of the elements of what could create this very crime all under one roof, and all the power is under that roof because they're all protected. They've got money, representation, weapons. They've got it all.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really think,
supposedly no cameras. Yeah, I'm not believing that, but maybe that's their rule, is the lawyers tell them no cameras anywhere near on the property, so that if anybody does anything wrong, they don't have any video evidence of us. That would be my guess.
It too. If you're talking about a narcotics situation where drugs are involved, why wouldn't the fraternity boys be included in that? Because they have all the protection that if they ever got caught with something in their pocket, they don't get charged.
Right.
Look at Emma Bailey. I mean, when have you ever seen somebody sit in a police station on camera, take something out and throw it away? Trust me, I've been in those police stations. First of all, I'm searched before ever being put into an interrogation room. I'm searched. At the moment they detain me, they take everything out of me. Now, does that mean they're going to take everything out of the rear end? It depends, because they shake everything. Is it going to fall out or is it not? You know, I mean, but clearly on tape, we've watched it. Everybody in here's watched it. She threw it right there in that trash can, meaning whoever services that police station has to empty that trash can. And it has to happen after each individual interrogated in that room. They don't let like 100 people. They would know who's there.
Right. Plus, it was on camera. It was on camera. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So, are you telling me that frat house has 0 cameras? They're mandated to have cameras. They have to have cameras. Yeah. Not in the bathrooms. Like I said,
sure. I think there were cameras too. I just think that was their, what they were claiming was there was no cameras there. But I've brought it up before. The 4chan posts. I mean, man, the first time I read that or watched something about that, it struck me as this seems real for some reason. And so much of it was real. Like, this was stuff that came out long before Brian was arrested. So now you've got mentions of Barry, which we know as David Baracoa, and E for Ethan, and Rogaine for Jake, and all these different nicknames were their nicknames. And talked about it took 19 minutes from when they left to when they got back. And if you do the math on that body cam at the band field, when that body cam comes on, it was about 2:55. And in my opinion, the last call to Jack D, 2:52, I think that's when it went down. And if you do the math, 2:52, and when they're running across the band field heading back to the frat, there's 4 of them. You could see them in that light, the silhouette. That's 3:12. And if you do the math, that body cam was on for about 20 minutes. And isn't that odd that those cops were there at that moment when that, I think, happened? At least the 2 in the 3rd floor happened at that time, and those cops just happened to be there in those 20 minutes. To me, that's too much of a coincidence.
let me add a little bit to that, because remember that body cam footage. One thing you could see in the distance, obviously, was the house.
Right.
You could watch Xana and Ethan's bedroom light turn off in that body cam footage.
Right.
That kind of tells me somebody took their lives and shut the lights off for the rest of their life. That's just a thought I had. But also, to go back to the 4chan, you made a great point. The one that always sticks to me, and I wish I could go sit and walk that fraternity real fast, because I want to find whoever's room is in that fraternity, that their window looks directly in the victim's home's back window.
It was supposed to be Loach's. It was supposed to be, according to the 4chan, I think it said it was Loach's window, which makes perfect sense, you know, because
could you only imagine, though, if you were literally to be able to, because who would have posted that would have known that,
right,
other than somebody that legitimately knew that, right? Like you and I can't just make that assumption and go write a 4chan post. Ian Harsh couldn't go just make that assumption and write that post. Brian Koberger would not know that. So who did? Who knew that?
Right.
You know?
And the other one that I thought was interesting is that 4chan post referenced Barry's dad was involved in a professional cleaning business. And I researched it. I had Blogger Girl help me do a little research, and I did some as well, and found out, yes, that he was like a financial type of advisor. It was only for a year, and he left right before this happened. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but all I can tell you is that when they searched that crime scene AR, and all they could find is 2 unknown male DNAs in the house and one on a glove outside, that place was professionally cleaned. That was not like somebody with a bottle of Windex and a roll of paper towels, or not my son when I used to tell him to clean his room and he just kicked shit under the bed. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about professionals. And I'm not saying that Barry may have used something or known how to do certain things. I don't know, but that was what the 4chan post mentioned, and everything in that 4chan post, oddly enough, seems to be somewhat truthful. And I think it's hard to discredit it. And I think you're right. I mean, I don't know who the hell could have wrote that other than one of them or somebody very damn close to one of them that maybe didn't like them, you know, and maybe wrote that in hopes that they'd get caught. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Think about it. You got to think about it too. You're a well-established, published writer. You know the work that it puts into the detail and the grabbing to get the detail into people's minds. I'm learning how to write. I'm getting better by the day. I know what it takes to get that cliffhanger and get that detail to catch somebody. And those 4chan posts knew exactly how to nail the detail to grab everybody's thoughts. Even someone like myself that's so analytical, I look at everything. I tear everything apart. My wife will tell you if she wears her belt a little off center, I know, I analyze it. I got it. You have to fix that, you know? So when these type of writings come out, the very first thing I do personally, I start tearing apart the details to see if any of them are so outrageous that you just have to throw the whole thing out. Like it's easy to make it sound legitimately correct, but there's always the one thing in there that you could throw out and say, well, that threw it all off. That one thing right there, it's gone. And there's nothing like that in that 4chan post. No. There's nothing in there that you can substantially look at it and point at it and go, now I know you're a liar. That's foolish. Get rid of it, because it all makes sense.
You're not accusing me of writing that 4chan post, are you, AR? The way you started talking about my writing You were kind of setting me up and then accusing me of being the Forchan
You
posters.
just never know nowadays, my man. You just never know. And I'm the one that
Right.
planted the DNA evidence, I'll tell you.
Well, I am getting ready to write another book here, so I'm anxious to get started this summer. I got a couple of projects I'm getting ready to do.
I gotta
So I'm
tell you, it's a
anxious
lot of
to
work, Pete. I'm engaged. I'm writing two, as I've talked to you about, and I think I've let many people know that I'm going to start releasing some of this stuff. I've got the fictional aspect, and I've got a little more of the personal biography style. It's hard work. It's extremely hard work. I got a lot of respect for you for getting it out there, getting it published, getting all that time and effort out there. Because
yeah.
I don't know
Well,
if you use your own editor or you did your own personal editing, but let me tell you, I do my own personal editing, and I'm changing words every 5 minutes. So it's like, okay.
well, I wrote my first book when I was in the Army, and my kids were little, so that was a challenge. It took me a year, 52 weeks, and I finished it. That was the first novel I ever wrote. But then I didn't write for a while. I was doing the band thing and stuff. But then when I got back into the writing stuff more, my process, I do several versions, several rewrites, look at it on the screen. There's a Stephen King book called On Writing that's really good for writers. Anybody out there that writes, buy that book. Even if you don't like horror, it doesn't have anything to do with it. It's about writing. But he talks about print it out and go over it, print it out. And I've noticed how many mistakes I find when it's printed as compared to looking at it on the screen. And then I let it sit for the novel, let it sit for a month when you do your final edits, and then you're looking at it with fresh eyes. And then my wife is my editor, and she does one final pass for grammar and any issues like that. But I have beta readers that read my stuff in rough draft form and give me feedback. So it's a process. It's a team effort, but I do enjoy it. I've got two novels. I had to think for a second. Two novels on the website and four short story collections that I love short stories, so I do
Well, my
both.
my wife will tell you I have 1,800 pages written so far
Oh my
in a
God.
fictional, and I've
Wow.
got a little over 1,500 pages written on my personal story. So we're talking about almost 1,000 pages worth of information, and
Oh my
it's
God.
stories from
That's a
within the
lot.
penitentiary and life stories and everything coming up. So we're talking
Yeah.
about making it a book series.
Oh, for sure.
you know,
But why don't we talk about, while we're on this subject, AR, why don't we talk about this project that you and I are getting ready to work on? I teased everybody and said we had some news to announce, and we do. But
we do.
AR, why don't you explain it, or do whatever you want to do?
So, one thing is Pete and I built an actual friendship. It's not just an online YouTube. We collaborate and talk true crime. We legitimately talk outside of YouTube. We have become friends. I've began to really trust Pete and what I would like to do. And I think it's a great idea because you bring so much creativity to the plate and knowledge of how to put all that together. Is Pete and I want to do a 4-part series regarding my life, different events, different things that we've been through. It's almost going to be like an interview style that we will pre-record and then we'll come live and we'll do each part. And Pete, if you want to tell them the 4 parts, you had a great game plan. I think you could explain it really well, and we'll get that out
Sure.
there.
Sure. So, AR's got quite the story, and I've been friends with him now for a good couple months or so since we've been working together, and we do chat often, call each other often. But I this would be a good way to get his story out there, would be to interview him, and then, like he said, we're going to show the interviews, 4 of them, in a live setting where we'll be like commenting, pausing, getting questions, and showing it to you, but we'll interact with you. But the 4 parts, the first part is going to be about his upbringing, his childhood, how it all started, kind of lay the groundwork. And then part 2 is going to be, you know, his descent into some criminal behavior and how that all started and that story he's got. And then the third part will be his time in the penitentiary. And then the fourth part will be his redemption, his return back, and his channel and everything he's done since. So a positive thing, but a cautionary tale, AR, because, you know, there could be some people doing some criminal stuff that may be watching us, you know, and, you know, we were both young once, you know, we get it, you know.
I want to make it informative, and I think that's the heavy emphasis of what we're going to accomplish through it is, yes, we're going to discuss a lot of things in regards to the upbringing that may be a little painful to talk about, because I do have a little bit of a rough upbringing and you know, things that happen. But that could help families gain knowledge of why certain people like adoptive or children out of a foster system adapt to the world, and what maybe we could do to help them adapt better. And then when we get into, you know, more of the prison stories, I don't want to gloat about, you know, things that I did or the crimes or how I acted in the penitentiary, but I want to give you the mindset of what that type of lifestyle was and what created it and what it was like to have to live it, and then the want to get out of it even while you were in it, but struggle to be able to do that because you were so engaged and so tied with it. Then obviously the justice system battles and the penitentiary ups and downs. And that's where we want to introduce Jen into the mix, because she rode that penitentiary roller coaster with me. And then also the redemption aspect of how things can change, how someone can learn. Someone that wants better can make it happen with somebody that supports them and stands with them. I think that's an integral part of where Jennifer can come in and be a part of that story as well, helping tie it all together. But this is really out there to help those better understand how a very simple life that many from afar would look at and think, oh, he has a great life. He was adopted into a great family. He had all these chances, really leads into many other avenues and thoughts and emotions. And maybe some, like you said, that will be watching it can feel as though they have support or someone that will listen, whether they reach out to you, to me, or others that are enduring the very thing that we're talking about. It can make a difference. Another person out there with a voice that's willing to stand up and say, I'm going to be fully transparent. I'm going to tell you what it's like. And no matter how painful it is, I think it's a story that needs to be told. And no better person to do it than either yourself and a good creative helper in doing that. Awesome. And a wife that's willing to stand by you. So
yeah, that's going to be, it's going to be great. So we're going to be starting this soon. No date set yet, but we are doing this. So yeah, I wanted to bring up this comment here. We had this Don't Die 509 says Pete and AR Hayes, awesome true crime creator. So thank you very much for that. And then Wendy, see her all the time in the comments. She said, well, this sounds amazing. So thanks, guys. There's a bunch more. Those are just a couple I grabbed to mention
definitely,
that here.
that's
so
one thing I want to say, that we have some of the best subscribers and followers I think that any channel on YouTube has. And I know, you know, everybody mingles between different content creators because they want to see all the content. And I think that's fabulous.
Oh, sure.
I think that's a great idea. I just want each and every single one of them to know, and I'm sure you would reiterate exactly what I'm saying. They're special, and they are the reason why we do what we do is because of the people that we engage with every chance that we get. It's amazing. I actually miss them when I take a step away from YouTube and I'm gone for a week. My phone blow up with people wondering where I'm at, what's going on, am I okay, is Jen, you know, okay? And that's amazing to even think about, because we're not just a channel, we're a family, and that amazing people.
Yeah, I agree. But one thing, AR, I know I had it on our list here. We've had some people in the comments about this, but the brass button snap has been a bone of contention with a lot of us. And when I did that interview with Mick from Australia, we talked about this because he knows a lot about it. And there's been quite the hubbub about this because the K-bar knife uses a brass button snap. And I was looking at one of my bags and I meant to bring it in here and I don't have it on me, but when I was in the Army, I had a bag I used to use for like snacks and just random books and different things to take with me when I went out to the field. And I still have it and I still use it. But that bag has brass button snaps on it. It's 30 years old. Okay. So I looked at the brass button snaps because we're seeing stuff, I'm seeing stuff in the comments about this from people that are, the guilters out there about Brian Koberger and saying that the brass button snap had like a clear coat on it. And so if the DNA was on the brass button snap with the clear coat, the DNA isn't touching the brass, it's touching the clear coat. So I wanted to do a follow-up, and I'm getting ready to record it tomorrow, a follow-up video to this, but I thought I would bring it up here tonight in our live and tell some people about, some ideas I've got on this because I've done some research. And we don't know how old that K-bar knife was. Okay. So it could have been bought a week before on Amazon. And that's a whole different argument, as I'm seeing people in the comments saying he bought the knife on Amazon. Okay. If you're expecting me to believe a PhD student in criminology is going to buy the murder weapon on Amazon, then I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. Like, good luck with getting through life with that. So, I mean, like, I don't even understand. Like, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. So that didn't happen. But he could have bought, or anybody could have bought, a K-bar knife at an Army surplus store, at a camping store. A lot of people, Lucky was talking about, he has one. He uses it when he goes camping. It's good for that kind of stuff. It's not a weapon you would typically use to do what supposedly was done with these 4 victims. I think that weapon wasn't even used at all. I honestly don't. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, it's even funny because just to touch base with what you're talking about, the ordering of the knife on Amazon, if you remember back, and it made more sense when it was talked about, the guy claiming that he was selling knives on Craigslist or whatever, and Brian Koberger potentially from him in cash. Right. To me, that makes so much more sense than an Amazon order. But right. I mean, and he even made the claim that it was not K-bar knives, it was different knives, which also makes more sense to me because, my adoptive father was military. He was out of the Marines, and he had K-bar knives all around the house, and he was an avid hunter. And he even said when he went hunting, those were not the prime knife to get the deer cut with. They were just a utility knife that was good at a few things, like cutting rope or whatever.
Exactly.
It wasn't his knife of choice. So
no, they dull quick, I've been told, and the tips tend to break off, is what I've been told. I never have used one. I was in the Army. We didn't use K-bar knives, but I've never messed with one. But the brass button snap is what they use. And why do they use brass? Because brass resists corrosion. Because I had somebody say it would rust if it wasn't clear coated. Well, genius, brass doesn't rust. Okay, because it resists corrosion. I was watching a YouTube video. Go figure. I watch YouTube videos constantly. It's kind of wild. But with my grandson, not Idaho 4, not Delphi, just a video with my 9-year-old grandson. And it was about things around the house they know, or something like that. And it was cool, and he liked it, and we were watching it. And it talked about how back in the day, and I don't know exactly what day they were talking about, but back in the day, it was very common, and it still is to some extent, maybe higher end ones, for doorknobs to be brass.
Mhm.
And they said the reason for that is so that you don't get passing, or you're not passing disease back and forth when people are entering and leaving houses. And I thought, boy, isn't that interesting? So this is like, while I'm thinking about this whole brass button snap thing, that video comes up and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then I got thinking about that bag of mine and I was like, are those brass? I brought it downstairs. They are. And then I remembered when I was in basic training, and it's like going through a pretty rough couple months of my life. But when I went through Army basic training, the one of the jobs that one of the squads had to do was to clean the bathrooms or latrines, and the floor drains all had a brass grate over it. And I know it was brass because they had to take that out every time they did the bathroom after they were
Mhm.
done squeegeeing all the mop water down the drain. They had to take the drain out, clean the cover, clean it, and then use Brasso to make it shine so they could just walk in there and see it had been cleaned. And so, why would they use brass in a floor drain in a bathroom? Well, gee, what do you have all over a bathroom, right? So you got all
Mhm.
this funk, for whatever lack of a better word to call it, going down this drain. And if you've got a drain cover that's going to attract fungus, and that's not healthy. So it makes sense to use brass. So, to make a long story short, that's why they used a brass button snap on the K-bar knife, was to resist corrosion, to resist any kind of, blood getting on it and getting causing a problem. It's going to be cleanable, and that's why the DNA doesn't last on it. Now, the podcasts and things I watched about this talked about this study, and I looked up the study, and it's very fascinating. I can't recall who did it now. I did a video on this a while back, but there's a study done and they use fish DNA, I think salmon, because probably ethical reasons with human DNA, I guess. I don't know. But they used salmon DNA and they found that it only lasted 2 to 3 hours on brass. Okay. So, how does human DNA differ than salmon DNA? I'm the last person that you would want to ask that because I have absolutely no idea. Okay. I'm just a podcaster on YouTube. Okay. But I'm going to say that it sure as hell isn't lasting 12 to 13 hours. I can tell you that. And if we're to believe that these crimes happened at 4 a.m. ish, and Payne didn't stroll in there from whatever the hell he was doing 4 hours later at 4 p.m., so 12 hours. Personally, I think they happen more closer to 2 and 3, but that's for another day. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. 12 hours. There is no way in hell that DNA is lasting on that brass button snap for 12 hours. I'm not buying it. I don't know. What do you think, dude?
I definitely heard it all in regards to the lasting of DNA on, I've never dove into it. I've never had to deal with it before in my lifetime. I never thought it would even be, a part of the
Sure.
case until people have discussed it in this one.
Right.
And I, like you, have listened to a lot of voices out there. One of them, and I don't engage a lot anymore on YouTube. I watch a little bit here or there, but in the past, I would go to even channels that I didn't engage a lot with to hear what they had to say, because there are some people out there that really do deep dive. And one of them that I listened to was Get a Clue. And they did a really good job of breaking down a lot of information in regards to the brass and the DNA on it and the time frames. But even more so, they reached out to the actual manufacturers to learn details about it. So they did a great job. I give them a shout out. and I don't normally do that, but I'm giving them a shout out. But it's very interesting to see that on the brass, it seems like the top of the time frame would be 6 hours. That's like the full length of time that it could last.
Right.
Most times they say less than 2 hours.
Right.
Boy, and to think of that's your vital DNA to this case, and even outside of it being shaky type of DNA, now you add that to the fact that it maybe wouldn't even last that long,
Right.
if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would think even somebody that's cleaning that sheath, if you're, I don't know, just picky like I am, you're using agents to clean that sheath, cleaning agents, they're typically pretty strong.
Mm-hmm.
Would that clear coat survive that? Even if it did have clear coat, would it survive that cleaning agent time and time again?
I asked that cop about the clear coat and how long it would last, and he said it has to be reapplied every year or two. So the K-bar knife became in existence in 1942 with the Marines.
Right.
So how old was that K-bar knife? We have absolutely no idea. It could have been from 1942 up until the day that happened. Anywhere in between there is, so we don't know. So my bag is 32 years old or whatever it is, and I have no clear coat on that button snap. On a button snap, you're snapping it and unsnap. How long do you think clear coat's going to last on that?
I mean, I would think especially if you're picky and you're cleaning it with agents, let's just even say something like bleach. It's going to take that clear coat off rather quickly, because think about when you go and you wash your car and you have to wax your car with the clear coat. It doesn't last very long with the elements and the cleanings and the things that happen. But even more so, I mean, and it's kind of a direct reference to exactly what we're saying. We don't know when that knife came into play. If the knife is the actual weapon used, we don't know when that knife was obtained, because we don't even have the weapon that was used in the crime. It's gone. It's not, nobody's found it. So even if I told you, Pete, that I know you ordered a knife on Amazon 7 months ago, that doesn't mean that's the knife you used.
Right.
I can't prove that's the knife you used.
Plus, he went hiking. Like we said, that's a common knife that people would use. But again, I'm not buying it that the guy's going to Amazon to get something. I mean, it makes zero sense. It makes zero sense.
Let's take a minute to laugh for just a second. Can you imagine the scurrying of investigators now out there, now that alibi information came out about that park that he liked to frequent? Do you think they're in there tearing that place apart, trying to find stuff? I mean, I thought about that the minute that info came out. Yeah, I like to be around this park. It's like, yep, they're in there. They're shredding that place up. There they go.
For sure. For sure.
First time they looked for the actual knife and clothing, they're in there. They just waited for that alibi.
Right. I had
Hilarious.
this comment up earlier and we got sidetracked. So sorry, Jennifer Fowler. This one here, AR, that Ellie planted the knife sheath at the crime scene with his touch DNA, and WSU police officer Isabel Luengas pulled him over for running that red light in Pullman. I remember seeing that the month before. So, I did see somebody else was going under Dog the Bounty Hunter. I don't think it was the real Dog the Bounty Hunter in the comments, but maybe it is. So Dog, welcome to the chat. But Dog the Bounty Hunter said the same thing about that he had been pulled over a couple of times. So who knows how they could have got his DNA. I mean, again, transfer DNA, touch DNA could be as simple as he handed him a card or he used their pen, or I mean, it could have been anywhere.
Well, think about it this way, too. I mean, even just outside of that, they will not release the body cam footage from one of those stops for some crazy reason. Do you think possibly he had a weapon in his car that they confiscated during the traffic stop and said, hey, look, we don't feel comfortable with this being in your vehicle. They took it. That could have been a K-bar in his knife sheath. Now they got it. And I'm not saying, look, I don't jump up and down about the whole law enforcement planted evidence. You know, when I discuss the justice system and where I feel like law enforcement made their errors, I typically try to focus on unintentional happenings more so than intentional happenings. But this case is so wild, and looking from afar, it makes no sense whatsoever. This could be one of those ones where they did actually plant evidence. And,
Right.
you know, here we go, you know. So,
yeah, it's
or they
hard to
didn't even
say,
really
man.
plan
It's
it.
possible. I mean, you know, I've said it before, AR. You know, my dad used to work in the parole line of work for many, many years, 20 plus years. I've got friends that are correctional officers, people in the law enforcement industry, so to speak. I do not want to say that they did this. I wish that they weren't even part of the story. It sucks. But when you
Right.
see mistake after blunder after shady, I mean, non-stop, they are not doing anything in their favor. It almost seems like they're doing it on purpose. And that's one thing I'm getting ready to do a video tomorrow morning that's going to blow some minds. I'm telling you, I'm going to get some interesting comments. But all I'm going to say is it makes you wonder, is this some sort of distraction? There's so many goofy things. And that's why I pulled up this comment from the Richard. He's a member on the channel here. So thanks, Richard.
He's on mine too.
And
He's a great guy. Yep, great
he
guy.
is. And this
Yep.
comment's excellent because I've referred to Moscow, Idaho as Twin Peaks, Children of the Corn, the Twilight Zone, and the Sopranos all rolled up into one. So he's referencing that. Seems like Twin Peaks, or more like Blue Velvet, Lost Highway for sure. Or any David Lynch movie you can insert there. I'm even going to go as far as to say maybe a little Eraserhead there, Richard. But too many people with similar names, the judge thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, man, it's almost like this goofy story that somebody came up with and just thought, you know, this isn't going to be that big of a case. Nobody's going to really dive into this. So nobody's really going to pay attention to these little stupid details. But I mean, seriously, and you got all these Jacks, you got 3 different Jacks, you got a Jake. I mean, it's nuts. It really is. This whole case will make you crazy.
I'm going to join you tomorrow. I'm actually releasing a video that I'm going to get some fun interaction with as well. And it's going to be Brian Koberger, law enforcement officer, standing pat in jail. And I'm going to go through the scenarios that I see where he actually is working for law enforcement. Because many have asked me that question. What's it like when there is an undercover that's arrested and what's going on? And I'm going to lay some truth out there in regards to why it is.
Want to see that. Yeah, because I'm doing my video somehow has ties with that. So I would love to see what you do. Like I always enjoy watching your stuff, man. Now here's another one from Chappie Boss. I wonder what the water meter reading was on that day. 8 hours, a lot of cleanup going on. Yeah, I mean, they probably did run the water bill up a bit that day, I think. AR, a lot of cleaning. I mean, do you think a full-scale clean went down to get rid of DNA for anybody that was there? I mean, I guess my first question is, why would you clean up? I mean, do you think the murders happened there or outside? Because I'm seeing a lot of stuff coming in on my comments about Linda Lane, about Banfield, and things happened out there, and that this was all a staged scene.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that? Was it bloody in there?
I get a lot of the same, interaction coming my direction too, in regards to Linda Lane footage, and people feel like a lot is coming out of the Banfield footage and what could have possibly happened there. And, I don't discredit anybody. I don't discredit anybody's feelings, thoughts, because I think we're all open-minded enough to realize this case doesn't make sense and there's a lot more to it. And there's possibilities that many things that some of us don't agree with, like I shake my head and just say, I don't think it is, because staging a scene is so much work, moving the bodies. And do you really have everybody in the area under control that you have no witnesses whatsoever? I mean, there's just so much to go into that. Am I saying it's not possible? No, but I don't jump on board with it so much. I would jump more on board with you had an 8-hour time frame within the home, that there's a possibility a major cleanup transpired. It's going to be very interesting to find out where the trail of blood evidence really is. Is it coming down the stairs and through the living room area and into Xana's room? Is that area going to legitimately show the signs of a massive crime scene? Is it going to be bloody enough to really, I guess, prove that crime is what it was? Because you would think 4 people with a knife, the way that they're claiming, it's bloody. It's gory bloody, very bloody. And if that's not the case, there's only 2 reasons why. And that would be a major cleanup, which takes 8 hours to do. Or 2, some of those people's opinions and thoughts of outside of the home are legitimate and possibly very, very true. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, so the same guy or same person, Chappie Boss, who put up the last comment here, threw another one on, so I threw him back. Listening to some Lamb of God. I'm not a huge Lamb of God fan. I'm a metalhead, of course, and I'm not like against them, but I like some of their earlier stuff when they were disturbing the priest, but not as much of the newer stuff. But listening to that new Tombstoner Chappie Boss. So check out Tombstoner. Brand new album just came out if you like death metal like I do. So anyway, I digress, as Harsh would say. But yeah, so the brass, yeah, for sure. We all do, right? But the DNA and all this is such a cornerstone for their case, and that's why I think there's nothing wrong with a healthy debate about it. I think that people, want to understand it. And I know at first I couldn't, but then I watched some videos. It was a good TED talk. If I remember, I'll put it in the description for the replay. There was a really good TED talk that helped explain it, which was good. And so there have been some, good channels that have done some things. The Thought Riot podcast, which I really enjoy. Those guys did some really good content on it. I really like what they do over there. So
both of those individuals with Thought Riot are, man, they're intelligent. They're well-spoken. I'm a huge fan of their channel. Huge fan. I'm a fan of
trying to get him to do an interview with me. I can't get him to do an interview with me, but
you know what? The great thing about them is they're on a path, and they know what path they're on, and they do a great job of staying on that path. They're never allow any negativity to seep into what their goals and what their structure are. And look at how they've grown. They're highly successful. They're doing amazing things. I'm glad we're giving them a shout out here because they definitely deserve it. They really do.
Yeah, they really do. And they've been in my comments before and I'm in theirs. So I really, really like their channel. But, AR, I know you and I like to be drama free, but it's unfortunate that there's so much of the drama out there. But what's nice is that, here, we just try to just stay out of that stuff and just talk about the cases we want to talk about instead of making that negativity part of the discourse. I just think that's just doesn't necessarily need to be there.
Because of people like yourself, you've really helped me, and I'm glad I have my wife with me too, because at first I was getting mingled and getting caught up with how the drama was affecting me. And I always felt like I had to make a response, or I had to. And you know what? Every day we get drama. Every day we get negativity. Every day it comes at us. And now I've just learned the more I let it bounce off of me, the happier I am. And when I'm happy, I do better content and I have better interactions. So if people want to be negative, so be it. I'm just not going to pay attention. I like engaging with individuals like yourself. We have great conversation. We talk about real, substantial topics, and we don't need to argue about. We don't need to put anybody else down when we discuss it. This is the way to do it right here. It's the way to do it. And I highly respect many others that are doing the exact same thing. So
yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, I did want to ask you guys. Well, I had just this hit my mind. You get to be my age, AR, you start to forget stuff more often, but
I'm not far behind.
I wanted to ask you guys in the chat here. I'm watching the chat the best that I can, but I'd love to know. I put this question on the community tab today or yesterday and was looking to get some feedback. I'm doing these lives on Sundays. I'm going to do them at the same time, 4 to 6 Central each Sunday. There will be, I'm sure, some Sundays I can't do because of things going on, but I'm going to try my best. But 2 weeks from today is Mother's Day. So I wondered, and if it's ladies, whoever wants a comment and let me know, yes, it would be okay to do the live on Mother's Day and you would be interested in attending, or no, I'm going to be busy. You just yes or no. And that'll help me kind of get a gauge, because you guys are obviously watching this. So you guys are interested. But if I do it, I'm going to be doing that one with Lucky. So Lucky and I on Mother's Day, if that's something you're interested in, let me know in that. And then that'll help make the decision on whether or not we're going to do it. So that's up. And next Sunday, it'll be just me is the plan. So, AR and I will do some of these, and I'm doing stuff with him. So, we'll see each other all the time. But next week, it's going to just be me doing this. But another thing that I wanted to talk about, AR, is Cy Ray. The defense wizard comes in, and man, I got caught up in it too, that he really got a lot of people that have been on the fence on Brian Kohberger or leaning toward he's not guilty, he's innocent of the charges, very excited because we got this breath of fresh air in that hearing about the survey when Thompson looked like a fool in front of everybody. And then coming off of that, you got this Cy Ray and the updated alibi. But what are your thoughts about this guy, AR? So
first of all, and I've seen a lot of the negativity being put out by others as well, that he's not, as substantial of an expert as what he claimed, blah, 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 blah. Here's the number one gist that I want everybody to literally focus on, because it's very important. He is an expert. He's got impeccable credentials, and he's going to give some very important information regarding this case and Brian Kohberger. It's going to be a boom. Now, the key factor is not everything that he's going to say is being let out. Ann Taylor dropped a little niblet, but it was really a niblet that looked right at Bill Thompson and pointed the finger and said, "We know what you're doing." And that's where many people are not focusing, especially the people that found Brian Kohberger guilty. They want to focus more on what could this guy legitimately be an expert, what's he going to testify to. Realize the bigger picture right now is Ann Taylor pointing the finger saying, "Mr. Thompson, we know you're either hiding evidence or you got rid of it.
Right.
And we're going to prove that. Whether you want to own up to it and hand over the discovery that we've requested, or you're going to own up to the fact you don't have it, we're going to prove that what you don't have or have not given us is a downfall in your case." And this happens in trials. Trust me, I've been through enough of them.
Mm-hmm.
You have experts on both sides. So we're going to see Cy Ray, and then we're going to see an expert from the state, and those two battle, trying to win who's actually in the juror's mind is more creditable. But the key is the Cy Ray's not the only expert the defense has. That's the only one they've let out of the bag as of yet.
Right.
We know the state has experts because they can use the FBI, they can use the DA, they can use all of the federal agents they want. So they're going to have unlimited resources. But I'm telling you, the defense, they have more than what they say they do. And Cy Ray has more information than what's been let out of the bag.
Oh,
It's
I'm
gonna be
sure.
interesting to see what it is. Because I don't think he would step up to the plate.
No way.
Legitimately feel like he had something that could help, because all he had to say, "Hey guys, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Like I've got my own, you know."
In a business like that, credibility is everything. So if he would get himself voluntarily get up in the center stage on the case of a lifetime for somebody like that, and get up there and look like a buffoon in front of the whole world, that's not going to happen. Okay. Not going to happen. And I watched Truth and Transparency played one of his podcasts, and I watched some of it. Very well spoken, very personable, and here's the most important thing, very good at taking something complicated and making it simple. Okay. So the jury, who's not going to be some expert on how to read metadata on a phone, you may get some senior citizen on the jury that struggles with sending text messages. Okay. So, or anybody, not just senior citizens, but you get what I'm saying. So he has to make it simple and digestible and come across well. And I think he's going to knock it out of the park from what I've seen of him. So
almost a perfect example of that, Pete. I love exactly what you said. He breaks it down. He makes it easy to understand and digest. But think about the setup that he has when you're watching him discuss things with his wife. It's very flowing. It's very just going with, and think of how my wife and I do our lives. And that's what really many people have engaged into our channel, is the fact that my wife and I do the same thing. We sit, we talk, everybody engages in the conversation with us. So now you put that individual, Cy Ray, up onto the stand in front of a jury that's going to be the very everyday people like we all are, that love conversation that flows, easy to understand, a good speaking voice, capable of taking one of the hardest things that nobody wants to listen to or hear about and make it almost funny, understandable, flowing. They're going to hear. Where if you think about a federal investigator expert that's going to get up there, that's going to want to use all the high-tech digital informational wording, not
people
that
are going to fall asleep.
You know, you're going to look at it and go, I don't understand the damn thing you're saying, for one.
Right.
And two, you just did this for 3.5 hours, boring the living daylights out of me.
Right.
I want to hear this.
The Alex Murdaugh trial would be a great example of that, AR. I followed that hot and heavy that summer that was going on this last summer. And that was a perfect example of what you just said. There, the prosecution witness, very down to earth, very personable, but he had credentials all over the place. I mean, PhD. I mean, the guy was very, very credible. But he was very well-spoken, very plain English, down to earth, didn't talk over everybody. That is what I think is and that hit home, because I'm trying to understand bullet trajectory. Of course, with that case, you had firearms, totally different case, but high profile and all that. And this guy just came in and just killed it, you know? So That's what I think Cy Ray's going to bring to the table. And I know there's been some negative talk, but that's no surprise, because if the defense, or I'm sorry, the prosecution rolled out, let's say, one of their experts for whatever reason, you know damn well everybody on the other side is going to be going after that person. They're going to be digging into everything they ever said, every post they ever made. Me ridiculous, just like politicians. I don't know why anybody in their right mind, which is why
Well,
I
think
don't
about
follow politics, because anybody that does this is not in their right mind that would
think
put
about it.
themselves through that kind of scrutiny.
Pete, who's really rolling out the negativity? It's the guilters. It's the people
That's
that
what I'm
want
saying.
Frank
The other
Koberger to be
side.
buried and guilty.
Right.
The negativity is only coming out because literally in the back of their mind, it's pumping, going, oh shit, they actually have an expert witness that's stepping up to the plate that might prove what all of these people are saying. Oh man. No, we
Right.
got to keep him guilty. We got to keep him. And that's where the negativity, because those of us like myself, look, I've been through the system. I know what experts are like. I know when I looked at when my defense team would say, hey, we're bringing this expert. And I'm that
Right.
type of guy. Like I said, I dissect everything. Give me his credentials. Let me see what he's been involved in. I got to know.
Right.
This guy has impeccable work history. Impeccable. So why are we
Yeah.
picking him apart? Because he's doing a podcast with his wife and he makes
Right.
sense and he talks in a rather easy to
Right.
understand. What? Now he's not creditable? Come
Right.
on. Every
I
time
think
he
what it is
testifies,
he's not degreed like some of these people are, which personally I would rather somebody that was working in the real world. Nothing against anybody watching that's highly educated. I was dumb and didn't go to college. Should have gone to college. I had a full ride and I didn't, because I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be there. So that's that. But
well,
I would rather have somebody like that who was a cop, who's been on investigations, who gets that side of it, rather than some PhD who's basically a professional student, because they go to school for a really long time and then they become professors for the most part. Again, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just saying that that's one course of action. The other is to be out there in the trenches doing it. And this guy has done that. And I think, to me, that bears a lot more credibility than somebody that got degrees and all this stuff, which is great. But I personally think the hands-on is more appropriate in this instance. I don't know.
Let me put it in a way that I would know how to maybe sum it up and explain it. Would you rather get information on how a prison term is going to be served, what it's going to be like within the penitentiary, from an actual attorney that has all these law degrees and he's practiced law in the courtroom and he's got all this information from the cases that he's prosecuted or defended? Or would you rather get information from someone that's been on over 50 different prison yards over a span of over 25 years, that's been housed with thousands of other inmates that have had to be within the riots and the trips to the commissary, what it's like to eat in the chow hall, what the different demographic of race, interaction is, and the actual real information that's been there, done that, hands on? Or do you want all the degrees and the educational background that's never even stepped foot near a penitentiary? Never been there. They just know the law. That's it.
Right. No, yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I think that there's a time and place for that kind of stuff. But I think in certain cases, somebody that's actually been in the trenches doing it, to me, brings a little more credibility to the table. But this guy's lights out. I think he's going to be great.
Were all these people hating on him and so negative about him when he was testifying for the prosecution? When he handled all his cases, going for the prosecution to find people guilty, were they so negative? Should we flip that all back now and say we need to review every one of those cases because possibly this expert witness brought bad testimony to those cases, we need to review them all and take them to appeals court. I highly doubt anybody's going to want to do that. I highly doubt it.
I agree. I agree with you. Well, yeah, this has been great. We're over 500 people here watching this. So, man, this has really been awesome. We still got more to go, but I did want to, maybe get ready here in a few minutes to do this contest. But just really enjoying watching the chat and I, trying to get as many of the questions in as I can. But did want to remind people, make sure you like the video so it gets out there to more people. And if you're watching this on the replay, leave a comment. That always helps. And you guys are just awesome about that, and I appreciate that. AR, I'm sure you get the same thing on your channel. I mean, it's so important.
Can I give a brief little update, kind of like what you did?
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Just kind of a quick jump in as well on what's coming in my channel, but also tomorrow night with Lucky and Pete, we will be answering more questions, because what I did is I did a post, obviously, in my community page in regards to people that could throw questions out there that we're going to bounce around between the three of us, and we're going to answer a lot of those. So tomorrow, we may not have, just a downright topic that we're going to discuss, because Pete's very good about having a good setup and a good mind to have preset things that we're going to discuss, where I'm just more open. It's like, hey, we're going to answer some questions, and Jen's going to help us with those and beat us questions. We're going to take turns answering different things and bouncing our opinions. I myself, coming into May, am going to have a new edition on my channel where Jen and I are going to do what's called Speed Rush True Crime Mondays, where every Monday we're going to spend 2 hours going over all across the country and the world true crime headlines for prior. So those that don't have a lot of time to dive into wide range of cases will get 5-minute intervals on many different cases that we feel are very important. And then I'm going to do follow-up videos through the month on those cases with more details and information. So excellent. That's going to be kind of the new add to the channel, is we're going to do a more of a true crime widespread live. Then, of course, we'll continue the Idaho 4. And hopefully we get to engage more with Pete and Lucky and other creators, because I'm still working behind the scenes. And Pete, I know you have planned prior too for a fundraiser and some things that you're going to be doing, but yeah. I'm still planning my deal with Swamp Rose, and whether we're going to combine these or really work together on a bigger platform. But, cool. Like I said, we're going to be working for the cause of the Lily Peters and the siblings of the family to raise funds to help them be able to go to college and overcome the downfalls of some family issues and different things there. So it's all going to be for donational purposes. No, we're not collecting any money for ourselves. It's all going into a trust fund for the kids. So we're excited about that. And it's going to be more widespread than just YouTube. I'm going to be out in the community and doing things locally and trying to engage more outside of just the YouTube. So
excellent. That's cool. And you're going to be on the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast. You've already been on there once. We did an episode on false confessions. There's video of that segment on the channel here if you're interested in watching AR on the podcast, which is a lot different than the 666 seconds videos of the True Crime Deep Cuts. We do solved cases on there. That one was on false confessions, but AR and I were talking about the baseline killers there in Arizona, and we're going to do an episode on that and bring AR on for that. That'll be this summer sometime. So
my next door neighbor.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah, for sure. That's wild. That's wild. So yeah, I wanted to do some giveaways here. So what I'm going to do, this is how I did it last time. It seemed to work out pretty good. Okay. So keep your ears open on how to enter this contest. All right. Because if you put this in the chat or the comments, it doesn't count. You have to email your answer to this address right here. Nope, that's not the right one. Sorry. There it is. Murder Metal Mayhem at gmail.com. Very simple. Okay. I like to make these questions simple. I want to get as many people entering the contest. The contest will be over May 1st at midnight. So if you're watching this on the replay, you'll have a little bit of time to get it in. But May 1st at midnight, that's when the contest is over. And here's all you got to do. I'm going to give away to the first prize. We'll get the Murder Metal Mayhem activity book, an adult activity book, serial killer, crossword puzzles, and coloring. It's kind of fun. And my book, Terror on the Tracks. This is a collection of a few short stories of mine. I'll sign them both. I'll send it to you. I use a random number generator to pick the winner, and then I'll let the people know who won, and then the people that didn't win, I'll also let you know. And again, US only, US only. And here's what you got to answer. Complete this sentence. Murder, metal, blank. I don't know how much easier I can make it. It's right over my head. What's that, AR?
Hey, Pete, can I interject one time?
Sure.
How about you go ahead and make it worldwide. My donation will be, if somebody wins from overseas, I'll pay for the shipping to get it.
Oh, okay. All right. We can do that.
So
right,
you and I will work that out behind the scenes of whoever wins. Unless you want to do another giveaway tomorrow night, we can do tonight as US only, like you've announced.
Let's do that.
I'll do a different. Maybe we can do another one.
I'll do a different giveaway tomorrow. So that's a good one. This one's US only.
Okay.
Tomorrow night, the lucky AR and me on his channel, my channel also. That live will do a worldwide contest. I'll have a different, maybe a shirt or something I'll do tomorrow. Cool. So there you go. Answer the question. Murder Metal blank, and email that to murdermetalmayhem@gmail.com. So really simple, but we got about 15 minutes left. So I want to try to maybe get to a few more questions here. If anybody's got any, wants to drop them in. I'm looking through some of these starred ones just to see if there's any we didn't get to. And here's one. This is from Carl Thomas again. Carl has some really good questions, and I don't know a lot about this. I want to learn more about it, but I don't know, AR, if you know much about this. Carl's saying someone needs to talk about the second Chapin car parked out front the morning after the crime, which is interesting, and implications of Maddie as the leaseholder of a house and knowledge of drug activity by former owners. So that's obviously a very complicated question, but is there any of that stuff, AR, that you have information
I do
about?
understand. From what I understand in regards to the two vehicles from the Chapin, the first one was there the night of the crime. That's evidently what was driven and left at the home before even the crime happened. The second vehicle was the one driven to the crime scene after the crime scene had been found. And because it was parked in front of the house, it got roped off and it had to be kept there as evidence. I think it took them quite a while to get those vehicles back too, which is interesting because that makes me believe there's something about those vehicles that they felt was important to investigate. I don't know what it'd be, but just like they kept the golf clubs. And the reason why I feel like they kept the golf clubs is I think someone got hit with a golf club.
I think they were used.
I almost feel like Ethan grabbed a golf club and tried to defend himself with
That's
one.
what I was just going to say is I think he heard noise and he grabbed a golf club because that's all he had. And he went out there to confront them, and he was outmanned and wound up maybe getting hit with them. In result,
that was a feeling that I had in the back of my mind is it was actually somebody grabbed a golf club in that home to defend themselves. I almost even wonder if Bethany, hearing everything upstairs, ran into the bedroom and grabbed a golf club and took it back into her room with her, just in case somebody came downstairs. You just don't know. I mean, but I feel like those come into play. In regards to what was the other part of that question?
Something about Maddie being the leaseholder of, it just says of house. So I don't know if he means 1122.
Maddie was the main leaseholder on the entire house rental, and then everybody else was a sublease below her.
I got you. Okay. Well, that's
she was the longest term tenant in the home. Yeah, she was the longest term tenant in the home by far.
And then the last one of this, again, Carl with the awesome questions. And Carl, please email me. I want to do a video with you. Just the best thought process here. And then the last part of this is knowledge of any drug activity by the former owners. Now, I've been told, watching some different videos, that just mentioning those two can tend to get things taken down from YouTube. So I'm not going to go there because I don't want to deal with that nonsense. But there's been some.
Well, I agree with that. I did a whole video on him, and they took it down.
Really?
YouTube blocked that video and took it down. I got one of my first content strikes over a video about both of them. Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So I won't speak upon it. I don't speak upon.
So yeah, we don't really know about that, Carl, but we just want to try to avoid that. But thank you, Carl, for that great question. So let me look here. I think we've answered all the ones that I starred. But I see I keep
checking my phone. I'm sure I had them too, but
wow, Donna Lembo, who is a great person on my members of the channel, and she just won a contest for one of my books, and she gifted 5 Murder Metal Mayhem memberships. I have never had that happen, so I don't know how that works. AR, who claims those? I don't know how that works. Do you know?
It's going to go to random people that have the feature turned on to where they can receive membership. So we're going to be doing that as well tomorrow night, Pete. We're going to be giving away memberships on ours, but you're going to have 5 lucky individuals because of your great donor there that are going to become members for your channel and be able to earn the perks of your channel for a full month. And then they can make the decision at that point if they would like to renew that membership or if they were just happy with the month that they had. But that's an amazing thing that someone did for you there, and that's very cool.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. And text, dude, after we're done or tomorrow, text me how you do that, because I remember watching a live with Harsh and he didn't know how to gift his own. I would like to do that, but I don't know how to do that. So you let me know afterward. But thank you,
we'll Donna. Let's talk about that tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we do the live, and Jen can explain it too, because I have no idea.
But Donna, thank you. That was very nice of you to do that. And she got one of my books, so hopefully I don't scare her too bad with that book that she got, which is my novel Deeper Than Dead, which is about a guy who sentenced to live 99 years in a subterranean cell all by himself for 99 years. It's pretty interesting how he ends up there and why he's there, and there's a whole story behind it. But that's what she won in the contest last week. So, but just scanning here through people saying, great job and appreciate that. That was the wrong one. There we go. Maybe.
Well, we definitely appreciate them, and they are amazing as well. So we can't say it enough. That's for sure.
Yeah. You guys are awesome. We really do appreciate it here as we wind this down. But I know, with the Idaho 4, I came up with a list of 6 or 7 things, and all we did was cover the first 2 or 3. The first 3. We didn't get into any of the rest, which is how this works, because there's so many things we could talk about. I mean, I'm getting ready to do a true crime deep cuts on the grub truck. So that's something I got coming up. I'm going to do a true crime deep cuts with my new theory I've added upon my theory of the lambs to the slaughter. I'm coming up with some different stuff, some new things, and I'm going to do that in a True Crime Deep Cuts, since it's going to be a longer form video. So I got a lot of things brewing with True Crime Deep Cuts. And I also want to do an episode on the church, Christ Church there in Moscow, which is basically a cult. And I've done a video on it, but I want to do a longer form video about that, because that is a messed up situation, AR, over there. There are some really wacky people, and they could have, who knows, had something to do with this. If they were trying to cleanse Moscow, they wanted to turn it into a Christian town and all this kind of stuff. And I got nothing against religion, but this is beyond that. This is some wacky, like, compound, living on the compound, weird stuff.
Well, remember, they were a part of that scandal up there too, with the sticker gate.
They were.
So it's a pretty crazy situation. And to kind of you've got a lot of great plans, and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing next or why I'm going to do it, but I'm sure I'll come out with something at some point.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. I mean, that's the thing. If you've got the knack of coming up with these, and I know I get people in the comments that are really sometimes kind of crappy about saying, oh, it's just for clicks, it's just for this, it's just for that. And I explained it like this. I have viewers here. I just hit 7,200 subscribers today. I have 7,200 subscribers that watch my content. So if I'm doing videos that they don't want to watch, then they're not going to continue subscribing to me. So I'm not saying I'm doing videos I don't like, because I'm very interested in this case. So I'm lucky that I like what people want to watch. Okay. So the challenging thing is to come up with different things that haven't been done 100,000 times, in a case that's 18 months plus old now, so I think that's the trick, is to come up with new ways. And like I've said, with me being a writer, creative, I think I could come up with different scenarios, different ways things go down, throwing out some ideas. And like I said, tomorrow I'm getting ready to drop a bomb. This episode, I had a viewer send me an email that really made me think. And so I'm going to do that tomorrow, probably be about midday or so that it's out, a little later than usual because of this, because normally I'm recording on Sunday nights, but I'm doing this with you. But tomorrow, don't miss me, AR, and Lucky on the live tomorrow. That's 7 to 9 Eastern. And we're going to be having some fun, talking some Idaho 4. We're going to give away, I'm going to give away maybe a Murder Metal Mayhem t-shirt and a sticker. So you'll want to come back for that and check it out. And next Sunday, I'll be here doing this on my own, same time, 4 to 6 Central. So if you like watching these, we were at 550 was about the most we had in here tonight. So that was awesome. More than last week, which is good. So
you're always growing, my friend. I'm proud of you. I'm always proud to see you grow, my man. You do a great job. I'm a big fan.
Thanks, man. And it's the same. When I see, Lucky's channel, he's past 10,000, which is really great. Lucky's content is awesome. I know a lot of our listeners or viewers cross from one to the other, which is super cool. They watch Lucky's videos and yours and mine and other creators too. I mean, there's a lot of them out there. We brought up Thought Riot.
It's been hard to watch mine, considering I'm the laziest of the three. So I know it's hard to catch me doing many videos, but I want to amp it up and really get moving forward and do a lot more work, but I can't make that promise. I'm pretty part-timing right now. So.
And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, things come up in a person's life. Sometimes you got to back off a little bit. It's better to be, you were talking about being healthy, and, if you needed to take a break away, I know you were having some issues and, dealing with some of the nonsense that we put up with on here. And, it's tough.
I've also promised my wife that I'm going to focus a little bit harder on some of the health things and see if we can get a couple of issues rectified. And see if we can get me back to substantially healthier than I have been. And, you know, when your teeth grow back in, you know you're on the right path.
That's right. That's right. You look good. You look good. I wanted to throw up that comment from Tony Romo. I don't know if it's the real Tony Romo or a different one, but Slayer definitely like those guys. So cool. I got to throw out the metal shout outs now and then, but we're winding this thing down. But thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And AR, always a pleasure, my friend. And we'll see you next week. And don't forget to hit that like button, guys, before you go. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, and also subscribe to AR's channel as well. So we'll see you guys
Also, remember,
next time.
we'll see you tomorrow with Lucky
Right.
and Murder Metal Mayhem and the Convict's Thoughts.
Yes.